Justice isn't always a straight line.
He should be punished.
Sometimes it's delayed.
Hoping and praying for the best.
Sometimes it's denied.
Very frustrating.
But in this double murder case,
we're just going in circles.
Justice is stuck.
Feels like they don't know what to do with the case, or they just don't want to deal with the case.
As Michelle Rubio waits here, the man accused of killing her brother waits in jail after he was arrested for the crime a third time.
He didn't deserve to get his life taken away the way it was.
To Michelle, Danny Rubio was the ultimate big brother.
He looked out for his little sisters.
Very much. He would always come to me and my sisters, and he would be like, do you guys want some pizza? And we'll stay up, late at night, just eating pizza, joking around, laughing. Like, I miss those moments.
But on July 5th, 2020, he was trying to get home near 36th Street in Thomas, and he never made it inside.
He didn't deserve this.
Stabbed to death in his own neighborhood, Phoenix police say witnesses pointed them straight to a suspect.
He was very known within our neighborhood.
A man found sleeping in a nearby alley, blood on his belongings, knives strapped to his body.
We know that his name is Major.
Major Mackenzie, arrested on the spot.
And he's always been very aggressive within the area. So when all of this kind of unfolded, it was so shocking and traumatic, but the behavior wasn't shocking from this specific individual.
With kids in her home, Chelsea Friday worried about Major Mackenzie on their block.
We know that he struggled with homelessness. He's squatted in a lot of the empty houses.
Danny's body was found in Chelsea's front yard. She thinks Danny might have been trying to get Major Mackenzie off of her property when he was killed.
We could never pay the Rubio family back.
But Major Mackenzie told police he thought he could have been robbed and that he would kill anyone who tried to do that. Police said his comments were sporadic, and as police went through his belongings, another troubling discovery. He'd been carrying the picture of a different dead man, a silent witness flyer for Juan Martinez, who was killed just a few weeks before Danny in the exact same neighborhood. And ultimately, Major Mackenzie was charged with both Juan and Danny's murders.
It was really difficult for us for a while to even come home.
Major wasn't just known in this neighborhood. He was known in the system. He'd been in and out of jail and prison and mental health care facilities for most of his life. Court records reveal he was diagnosed with schizophrenia as a young adult in the 90s, and that he served prison time for violent crimes like assault and robbery in California and Arizona, and in Georgia under a different name. Throughout this time, records repeatedly reference his mental illness. Still, he wound up on the streets in Danny and Chelsea's neighborhood.
There's no reason he should have been on the streets. He should have been being monitored. He should have been somewhere getting help.
The I-Team found he was being monitored in the weeks before Juan and Danny were killed. In the spring of 2020, police records indicate Major Mackenzie was staying at a behavioral health home in the West Valley. And on May 17th, officers took him to a psychiatric facility. The paperwork doesn't say why, just that it was involuntary. And 2 days later, he was discharged. If you look closely at his discharge paperwork, which he still had when he was arrested, he was supposed to get more help. It states a follow-up appointment was requested, but it also reads that Major was not willing and able to sign off on it, and that no one was warned about his release. But there is someone who wishes she had been.
He had been in a program, he'd had contact with police, he'd been evaluated, had been recommended he have an outpatient appointment, all leading up to his arrest. How does that sit with you?
The courts, the system that's been put in place to keep all of us safe, including Major, failed.
This is Major Mackenzie's sister, who asked we conceal her identity because she works in healthcare.
We petitioned him many times because we did not want him to be a victim, nor someone else.
For years, she said she and her family tried to get Major help. These family photos from times when they were connected.
The weight of not being able to help your own family member who you see needs help and wants help, I would not wish it on anybody.
Despite wanting to be involved, she said many times he'd be released from care without their knowledge.
It becomes a revolving door, not just for Major, but for many hospitalizations, the prison system. Revolving door, because there's no real services that are consistent in between that.
But before summer 2020, she thought he was in a better spot.
Maybe 6 months before this occurred, he called me and he was saying how he was excited because he was going to be going to a game with his group. He was just happy.
Then the pandemic hit.
We were looking for him because we couldn't get in contact with him. I believe he was not getting adequate service because I wasn't even getting calls back from the case manager.
If those resources were more accessible to him, maybe this wouldn't have happened.
And they just let him back out in the street.
As Michelle dealt with the grief of losing her brother, she was about to be thrown for another loop in court. After pleading not guilty, Major Mackenzie's attorney argued that he was not competent to stand trial. The attorney asked for what's called a Rule 11 hearing. Usually, if this happens, a person will either be found competent and the case can move forward, or they're found incompetent, meaning they cannot assist in their own defense, and will have to go through a mental health process until the court says they can proceed with the case. But the court's own flowcharts show this can get a lot more complicated and could end up with the case getting thrown out. In Major Mackenzie's case, the court found he wasn't competent, but he also wasn't sticking to a treatment plan in jail. So prosecutors asked the judge to force him to take medication.
The medication is significantly likely to render this defendant competent.
But the defense said this could violate his client's rights.
He does not have the capacity, to stand trial. Is that correct?
Correct.
After much debate, the judge denied the forced medication, saying by law, he felt he had to select the least intrusive option for Major Mackenzie. He ordered Major Mackenzie to Valuewise for a psychiatric evaluation, dismissing the charges in the case.
I feel like they protect more the suspects than the victims.
Where does that leave you as a victim?
I don't know.
Once he was no longer in jail, court records indicate he did follow a medication plan at Valuewise and was allowed to leave just 12 days later. Disappointed doesn't begin to describe it for Michelle.
Whether you're incompetent or not, you did something wrong and you should be punished for it.
But another chance in court was coming. After Major Mackenzie was discharged from Valuewise in May 2021, he was immediately rearrested, and the 2 murder charges were filed again, the case starting over right back at the beginning. Like last time, Major Mackenzie pleaded not guilty, and then his attorney filed for another competency hearing. And initially, doctors found him fit for trial. It seemed like the case would take a different direction, but then another request to check Major Mackenzie's competency, and this time he was found incompetent and the case fell back into the same circle.
He knows how to play the system.
Do you think it's possible for an individual to play the system in this way?
Well, possible. I'd say it's fairly rare in competency.
Dr. Tyler Durns with Forensic Psychiatric Associates isn't involved in this case, but conducts competency evaluations in Utah.
What, malingering in these types of evaluations essentially does is really just kick the can down the road.
He said competency can be fluid, and it can come up anytime in any case.
Some illnesses do fluctuate to some extent, but generally this could happen when people are, say, inadequately managed. Medications are dosed properly, or potentially they even start refusing their medications.
Which is why these issues can take so long to address.
This process just kind of continues and continues until eventually they're found competent.
What if they never are?
This does happen, albeit, generally or fairly rare.
What do you make of that claim? Maybe he's faking it so he doesn't have to go to prison.
It would be different if he did not have a long history, 30 plus years. You're going to fake like you have a flight from reality. Then we would have to say that the professionals that are doing his competency evaluations are incompetent as well.
Why do you think he has not wanted to take his medication?
His words on why he did not want to be medicated: if I am medicated, I'm on my back. He was beaten almost to death when he was incarcerated. He does not want to be medicated because he has no way to defend himself.
He's afraid he'll get hurt.
Exactly.
Rules for forced medication vary state by state, but judges always have to consider whether there are other options.
It does need to be medically necessary and the least intrusive alternative.
Still, the state was going to try again.
So it's a vicious circle. You just be
competent, he might need medication, but he doesn't want to take the medication, and so we're just swirling around.
After reviewing hours of court video from this case, you hear doctors repeatedly determine medication is the best way for Major McKenzie to be restored to competency. Yet, there's still an impasse.
We tried it that way, and it didn't work.
In June 2023, 3 years after the murders, the state asked the judge again to force Major McKenzie to take medication.
We're going to be back on the merry-go-round.
The judge is grappling with whether or not to send him back to the hospital, where it's possible Major McKenzie could go into court-ordered treatment, or he could voluntarily take medication while he's there and get released again.
I, too, am very concerned about someone like that being out. But he still has a very significant fundamental right to not be ordered to take medication against his will.
The prosecutor implores the judge, saying if he denies the forced medication again, they risk going back to the beginning of this case for a third time.
We know that the defendant will take medication when given the carrot of being released.
But Major McKenzie's attorney,
My client is definitely opposed to forced medication.
he insists it's not a trick.
I know the last thing that Mr. McKenzie wants to do is be ordered to go to Valley Wise, to be released, just to come back to jail.
What do we do if we're back here again in 2 years and the whole thing has happened again? Do we just keep doing this?
I understand the dilemma there. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it means the law has to change in order to avoid situations such as this.
We can't change the law, so your poor client is stuck in this legal eddy, if you will, and he's just going around and around, and we're all doing it too.
Even the judge seems stuck in this cycle.
The individual liberty interest in not being forced to be medicated is so important that I think we have to try it again.
He denied the forced medication, ordered Major McKenzie back to Valleywise, and dismissed the murder charges again.
Yes, it may put us back on this merry-go-round, I don't know.
A month after that decision, another delay.
What do we do? I don't know.
Both sides back in court because Major McKenzie did not go to Valleywise.
Judge, what we have done in the past when Valleywise has refused to take a defendant because they think he's too dangerous.
Too dangerous. A spokesperson for Valleywise says, on rare occasions, they won't admit someone if they could likely pose a great danger to other patients. Court paperwork shows bed capacity was also an issue. But by August 2023, Major McKenzie had been evaluated. He complied with the treatment and was released again. And just like before, Major McKenzie was rearrested. He was charged with the murders for a third time.
And in this case, every time he's been sent to Valleywise, he has complied with the treatment.
Yes.
And every time he's in jail, he's been afraid to.
He said, I have agreed to being medicated, but I'm doing it in a way where I will be safe. He would be better off medicated if he was hospitalized and medicated, not in the prison system.
The loss of life and the charges against Major McKenzie break his sister's heart.
Just don't have words for it. And whatever the outcome is of it, it's going to be difficult to live with all of it. I do believe if he would have been able to get help, we would not even be having this conversation.
Did you think all these years later you'd be in this position with the courts?
No, I never thought that we would have to be starting a case after case after case against him because it was just going to be dismissed.
As stuck as Michelle feels in this case, a lot's changed in the 3.5 years it's circled through the courts. Danny Rubio's neighbors have worked hard to keep their community safe. Oh, neighborhood events like the Fall Festival.
Oh, nice snag, buddy.
Chelsea put it on in Danny's honor.
We've come a really long way within our community with the different things that we've battled.
The neighborhood even came together to build this garden in his memory. A place for Michelle to take her family.
You know, we get emotional because we wish we had him here.
In the latest refiling of the murder charges, there haven't been any requests for competency hearings as of February, but that could always change.
Right here, we're going to be planting some flowers.
Michelle is looking forward to all the growth in this space.
I just had to get some chilies into his little garden because he loves spicy food a lot.
As the seasons change,
I'm thinking about also having some red roses.
And the murder case starts its own cycle over again.